Rev up your engines!
Chase Boy 4 says, Catalytic Converter delete, is it worth it? I got a friend with a Grand Cherokee, 150,000 miles, 2018. He had the code PO420. He cut the cats out. They were all clogged. He just put a straight pipe. Is it worth doing this? And is there any drawbacks? He's aware that it's illegal. We do not do emissions testing here in North Carolina. Well, yeah, it's illegal. It's against the law to take them off. It's against the law to do it. But if they don't check emissions, nobody's checking it. People in Tennessee do that all the time. Now, the only thing, the absolute positive only thing that a catalytic converter does is it burns unburned hydrocarbons in your car to stop a bit of pollution, right? You remove them, the engine breathes freer. It actually runs a little bit better. Check engine lights will come on. The computer knows something's messed up. That'll happen the whole time. It won't hurt anything. It won't hurt the engine or anything. It is illegal. I don't know if they have weird laws, like if you drove it to California from North Carolina and the police pulled you over and said, you have a catalytic converter, they give you a ticket and put you in jail. I have no idea about that. But in terms of the car running, no. It's only an anti-pollution device. That's the only purpose that it's there for. Just like back in the day, they started to put EGR valves on, and that stopped pollution, right? Well, the EGR valves are strictly a pollution control device. You take it off, the car will actually run a little bit better, but it's against the law because it's an anti-pollution device. Most of the anti-pollution devices, that's all they do. 804 France says, should I fix up this rusty old SUV? I got a 96 Ford Explorer, 282,000 miles. Two-tone paint job, half paint, half rust. Frame only has surface rust, but the leaf springs are barely holding on. It runs okay in these muffling spark plugs for all cylinders. Is it worth it to fix it or just drive it? I'd say just drive it. I wouldn't put any money into that thing. Let's face the facts. If the leaf springs are barely holding onto the frame, when they snap, the truck is going to sit sideways and then just junk the thing. They get to that point. Back in 96, Ford was very poor with their anti-rust stuff, and those things rust all over the place. And the leaf springs, of course, hold the back of the truck up. And when they go, boom, down they go. You know, if they're really bad, the wheels, or if you're driving down the highway and they break, you might lose control. The wheels could hit the arch and then blow the wheels. If you're going 65, 70, you could be killed. It's not a safe thing to drive. I would just use it as a knock-around thing. Go to the grocery store and stuff, driving 30 miles an hour or whatever. But I wouldn't put any money into it. It's on its last legs. Why throw money into some crapper like that that's on its last legs? When it finally does go, rather than spending a whole bunch of money, over $1,000 to fix all that crap, just keep the money and put it towards another vehicle when it finally craps out entirely. Beagle 85 says, my 2002 Civic has the PO420 engine code for inefficient catalytic converter. I recently replaced my top dead center sensors. Could that sensor be bad, causing the engine manifold to get too hot and then burn up the cat? Well, it certainly could. It happens all the time. Catalytic converters theoretically can last forever. They don't burn up their own ingredients. They just burn the unburned hydrocarbons. But you get an oil burner, a car that runs too hot, a car that runs too cold, a car that runs too rich, a car that runs too lean. That's a 21-year-old Civic. If it burns oil, you change the cat, that's going to get ruined too, because eventually the oil will clog it up. That's the thing. You get to a certain point, it's not worthwhile to replace the catalytic converter. Now, if the thing runs perfectly fine, people driving that way for years. I had a guy in Houston who drove his 4 years that way. Then for some weird reason, he bought different gas at a different station, and then the code went away because the new gas burned better than the old one. You never know what the ramifications of it are. But of course, if you live in an area where you have to get your car emission inspected, you're screwed because you got to fix it. You can't get your car inspected. So a lot of guys will sell you a catalytic converter, and the next year you get the same code, and they just start all over again. It's a vicious circle. So my advice would be, if it runs good the way it is, I would just drive it and see what happens. Because maybe that did cause the problem to make it inefficient, but now that the problem's fixed, maybe it'll go back to normal. Put some catalytic converter cleaner in the tank, drive it, and then drive it around for a while and see. And if your car needs to be inspected, say in 6-9 months, maybe the code won't come back or it'll go away. Then deal with it then if you have to. Ray156 says, should I buy a GR Corolla? I have a 2015 Scion FRS and I want to get a new GR Corolla. What do you think? What I'm going to say is probably the opposite of what you'd expect, since I love Corollas. I'd say no. And you know why? Because it's going to be a new design. I would not put any money on that until it's been out a while. That's a small engine, 3-cylinder, you turbocharge it, all that extra pressure. Who knows how long it'll last? Even with Toyota, I tell people, do not buy radically new designs. I told people, don't buy that new Tundra. First year it came out with not a V8, but just the V6 twin turbo. They've had problems with the turbos. They've had problems with them. Don't ever buy a new model when it comes out. You're talking about a 3-cylinder turbocharged. I'm sure it's fast. It would be fun to drive as to whether it's going to last. last? You're not going to know till they've been out a while. And they'll probably go way over manufacturer's suggested list price because people will want them because it's a new fast car, and they'll jack the prices up at the dealerships. But no, I would not buy that car until it's been out a while to see what it's like. Birdman98 says, modern Camrys are so ugly. What's the best build alternative? Wife wants to trade a minivan for something reliable like a Camry. The only problem is we don't like those fronts. They're ugly. Thing in a 0 to 2-year-old market. I was thinking maybe Honda, Nissan, or Subaru. All right, I'd go Honda. They're excellent cars, too. I really don't like those ugly fronts. Now they're changing them. They're not quite as ugly. They went for that big scowl. Wah, like something from Home Alone. Some ridiculous, wide open thing. But it's like everything else in the car industry. They're sheep. They all follow each other in a line like a sheep. When I was a kid in the 60s, it was fins. And they kept putting tail fins. Eventually they had these gigantic fins. They almost looked like fins on a rocket, you know? But of course, the cars didn't go that fast. They'd serve no purpose other than you looked at them, right? And that big scowl is the same thing. Oh, look at that. Look, we like the scowl. And they all copy each other. It's like the emperor's new clothes. And they're so stupid, they just follow along. Well, it's the same thing with a lot of styles. They just follow along. For years, they're putting those airfoils on the back of cars. Looks like a race car, right? Yeah, in a race car, it provides downforce to keep the tires on the ground when you're going 200 miles an hour. Well, you're not driving that fast in a regular car. It doesn't serve any purpose at all. It's just for looks, and so is that. But, I mean, a Honda, they're excellent cars. You like to look better? Go ahead and buy one. They hold up a long time, too. Chief Wahoo says, what's your opinion on the GM 3.8 or 3800 V6 engine? I hear they're bulletproof. Yes, they are excellent engines. The problem is, they're in GM products. The transmissions are garbage. They break all the time. The electronics often break down. The cars themselves aren't that great, but those are great engines. Now, I often say the same thing about BMWs. BMW makes excellent engines. You know, they made airplane engines for fighter planes in World War I. They've been making engines a long time. The rest of the cars are so high-tech, everything's plastic, they fall apart and break and cost a fortune to fix as they age. The luxury car and German luxury cars always screw their customers over when it comes to price and servicing, right? But their engines are excellent engines. Same thing with that. 3800 is an excellent engine. It can last a really long time. Change the oil filter, change the coolant once every 5 years. They can last forever. But unfortunately, you're not riding on top of the engine. You're riding in the entire car, and the entire car, not so hot. But the engines are well made. Corey T51 says, can I drive my 05 Freestar to the mechanic with a bad fan belt tensioner? Can I do that without damaging the car? If it's just wobbling around, sure, you know? Even if it's not, turn everything tight. As long as the temperature gauge doesn't get into the hot, it's perfectly fine to drive it that way. If it breaks and the water pump isn't turning, eventually the car would overheat, right? It's a short enough drive, and maybe it's making rattling noises and stuff. You can still do it. You know, if the belt breaks, the water pump won't turn, the alternator won't charge the battery. But even then, you can usually drive 5-6 miles or more before they overheat and before you run out of electricity. So, you know, if you don't want to spend $150-200 for a tow, you should easily be able to drive it there. It's just the tension, the belt, you know, like I say, even if it fell off. I know people that falls off and they're like, oh, I'm stuck. And they'll drive it 5-6 miles. It starts to get hot. They turn it off. They wait an hour and start it back up and they go the rest of the way. Anything's doable. Well, old Elon Musk has had it again, bragging about how much his company's going to be worth, saying he's soon going to be the most valuable company in the world. He's going to be worth $4 trillion, right? Now it's supposedly $700 billion, but let's look at the facts, okay? Let's follow the money. And that is, he's after buying Twitter again. So he needs $50 billion or whatever he needs to buy that, right? Turning stock into money, now that's another story. You start selling stock, the price starts going down. When you sell billions of dollars of stock, the price drops. That's how the stock market works, right? So he's trying to blow himself up again so he can sell his stock to buy Twitter. I knows what reason he wants to buy that for, but... And of course he's bragging about his robots, those stupid robots he had that hardly did anything. I mean, it's amazing the scams the guy tries to pull off on people. And if they fall for it and put money into the company, hey, you just wait till this recession comes and we'll see what really happens to the value of Tesla and all of his stuff, right? You think everything the guy touches is gold, you're out of your mind. And now he's got to tout how rich he is so he can quick on the sly sell all the stock so he can pay for buying Twitter, you know? It's amazing, the nonsense that people pull, and then other people fall for it. He says there's no end in sight for growth. Yeah, how many times have we heard that? The stock market does the same thing. Oh, it's booming, it'll never stop, and then boom, the bubble busts. It goes right down the toilet, and it starts blowing up again, and eventually it blows up again, goes right down. No end in sight for growth is baloney. Absolute baloney. We live on a finite planet, a certain amount of resources. You can't just keep growing and growing and growing, or there won't be anything left. If we think There's no end in sight for growth. We can just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It doesn't work that way. And of course, he's just trying to con everybody so he can sell stock, and the stock won't go down too much, so he can buy Twitter, whatever bizarre reason he has for that. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.